Apparently, the Christian faith doesn't have much in common with the laws of physics. Physics, as I understand it, relies on predictable results and constant laws, that the properties of a moving mass must be verifiable, that relationships between objects must follow known patterns and paths. It all makes for a very orderly and predictable world, yes, and this would be the world most of us would prefer, one that is orderly, one that promotes confidence and assurance. The world of faith is not like that. Faith is predicated on the belief that what you can see and what you can measure is really only a part of what is going on around you that you do not yet know. That beyond the reality of what you can see and touch and verify is the God of the Scriptures, and this God has been surprising human beings for as long as we have walked on this earth. In God's amazing economy, the laws of math and physics do not always apply. That math and physics are confined to finite systems, and faith, by its definition, is an infinite reality, as much as something can be both a reality and infinite. And the text that brought this to mind comes from the 15th chapter of John's Gospel. Jesus is talking about the principle of love, God's divine love. This is the love that God displayed in the creation of all things at the beginning of time, and the love reinforced by God through Jesus of Nazareth, who came to be one of us, resident in this world of ours. And this is the love that God commands us to share, a self-giving love, a love for the other, that runs counter to many of the inclinations we have as we live day by day. The inclination to have ourselves the focus of attention, our desire to use others and other things for our own benefit. That's part of us as well. The first Christians, the first people who proclaimed Jesus as Lord, the first confession, Jesus is Lord, saw in the life of Jesus the premier example of love and grace, a unique self-giving love. They understood that their leader was a martyr, this Jesus, killed by political and religious authorities in their attempt to stamp out this one who was disturbing their comfort and challenging their authority. Kill the leader, the followers will wither away, deprive them of their spiritual inspiration, and soon all of that will just be a fading memory and then will be gone. That had worked in the past. No reason why it wouldn't work yet. But the life and teachings of Jesus were so profound, and Jesus built a personality cult not around himself, but about the God he always pointed to. If you look at Jesus, never to himself, always to the God who had created the world and all that is within it, pointing to this God who was the origin of all that is good and wonderful and worthy, a God of grace and forgiveness. That was Jesus' mission, point to that kind of God. Jesus was willing to die to testify to this vision of God. He was convinced that his witness to God's goodness would outlive his own life and give hope to those who come after, those who would take his teachings seriously. We sometimes say Jesus died for us, taking upon himself our sins so that we can stand before God as justified by faith. That, friends, is a pretty heavy, complicated theological statement. And it's been the grist for theological discussion and debate for a long, long time. And I believe that a simpler statement of faith is here in John's Gospel. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you, love one another. The martyr, Jesus, doesn't tell his followers to take revenge on those who took his life. The martyr doesn't say to his followers, form little cell groups of resistance, be ready to attack the authorities when they are vulnerable, keep up the fight, be a pain. No, Jesus, the martyr, said, love ought to be your very best attribute always. Make love the distinguishing personality trait for which you are known in your family and among your friends. Live your way into a chosen style of loving others so that when others observe how you have chosen to live your life, they may, in amazement say, look how those Christians love one another. You know, that's what really in the first century, the non-believers outside the church referred to the Christians, those people who love one another. Laying down one's life for others is a pretty extreme concept. The image that comes to mind when we hear that kind of verbiage is the religious fanatics that have been around for a long time and are very present even today. Religious fanatics like Christians and Muslims and Hindus and others who commit suicide by arming themselves with explosives, selecting a target with multiple possible victims, blowing themselves up and others, of course, seeking to make a statement of some kind of religious importance. I cannot imagine a more grotesque application of the words of Jesus, laying down one's life for others. Jesus is talking about loving in daily living, enfolding those about us with care and concern as the way you are living your life, feeding the ability to love by the practice of loving. It's a learned thing. It requires repetition and intent. And I think the key passage is verse number 11. I have said these things to you so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. The world is always on a mad search for joy, for happiness, for fulfillment, for a sense of meaning, a place. And the world has a lot of things to offer as ways of getting there. Own some new thing, maybe explore a new country, take a cruise or a trip, move to a new house, find a new hobby, find a new spouse. It's been done. The southwest side of Fort Wayne, Indiana was full of new housing developments when we moved there in 1975. There are a lot of people who are moving into Fort Wayne for finding new jobs at that time. And there are other people who were moving from Fort Wayne to find a new neighborhood. And so the housing industry was going gangbusters. And this was prime territory for a new church pastor, of which we were a new church family. As this new congregation grew, Peace United Church of Christ, so did my counseling load with these new families. Moving did not solve the relational issues that came with the boxes and the new appliances. The same people were showing up for meals. The same dysfunction now had a new address, but it was the same dysfunction. Surprise, surprise. The ability, the willingness to love others, the quest to find joy and fulfillment in life, I believe has a common meeting place. It is part of God's economy, contrary to the laws of physics and math. The more you love, the more love you have to give. And the other side is, the more you search for joy for its own sake, the harder will be your search. By most of the world's standards, things we value have a finite amount. They have a discernible value or coinage. And we only have so much of that in our lives, so much money in our checking accounts. Our home is valued only at so much when we have a buyer to give us that kind of money. And there are only 24 hours in a day. See all those limiting things, only so much? When the amount available is predetermined, is finite, then we tend to hang on with all our might, even hoard it, because we want it, and we're afraid it might go away. Someone might take it. It might diminish in value. And to give something away, willingly give something away, would of course make us poorer than we already were. And to share with someone else means that you will have less for yourself. That's physics law. What makes sharing and loving adventuresome and daring is the assurance that comes from God that the more you share, the more you will have. And in the sharing, you will find the joy. God's economy is an economy of plenty, that when you give away, you make room for more. And when you share, it makes you richer and not poorer. That the more you love, the greater will be your ability to love. And the more you give, the more you will have to give. The generosity you practice grows your ability to be even more generous. It doesn't make sense, but it's true. Loving others is a risky business at times. Loving others sometimes makes us vulnerable, prey to people who use other people to take advantage of relationships. We understand that. But loving also opens the possibility to intimacy, to meaning, fulfillment, and to joy. Love is the only commodity I know that enriches us in proportion to our willingness to give it to someone else. Love has the capacity, when practiced, to unlock depths of meaning and joy that only come from sharing. The wealthiest among us are those who, knowing the risks that are involved, still love, still stubbornly love those around them. may their tribe increase among us. Amen.